You're rocking with the voice of Town View. We put our spin on trending topics and school news. Thought-provoking, insightful, we speak the truth. We do it for all ages, not just for the youth. Listen close, you might learn something. Or laugh so hard, you split your side of something. Live stream a podcast. Whenever you tune in, it's sure to be a blast. Let's be honest, you don't want to miss that. Content so real, you're going to want to run it back. We keep you entertained while making an impact. Want foreign announcements? Well, this is not that. Sports, pop, culture, political. Whatever you like, we got you covered, bro. It's a movement more than just a show. It's KSBM Radio.
Come closer to the music.
Broadcasting live from Marvin E. Robinson School of Business and Management, Dallas, Texas.
My radio station.
We are KSBM Radio, the voice of Townview.
Hello and welcome back to KSBM Radio, the voice of Townview. I am your host, Emilia, and I'm here with my co-host,
Dior,
Skelly,
Champ.
And we have a very special guest today, Miss Callier. Would you like to tell us more about yourself, Miss?
Well, good afternoon. It's very nice to be here. I am so honored to be among such astute students and those who came to my room to prepare me for this. I was quite impressed, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your program.
Well, we're very happy to have you. And to start off, what are some experiences in your high school career that inspired your love for education?
Actually, my mother and father were both big on education. However, we didn't know we were being taught. One of the things we did at home at dinner time, we all spoke and had a voice at our table at dinner, breakfast, lunch, with our parents, and we could ask any questions we wanted. And one of the questions they would ask us is, what school would you like to attend? And then we had to tell them why we wanted to attend that school. Even first, second, third grade, these were questions we were asked. Wow. This is not middle school. We're talking about first grade. And you had to explain why you did not want to go to the school closest to home versus the school you wanted to go to. Mm-hmm. And if your answer was really good, they would take us. Oh. Yeah, so I learned then that to have a voice, even as young as that, is important to all people, and I still do that. I try to do that in my classes. I'm trying to get my students to talk more, and they're starting to do better. They are. They are.
So you've received degrees from Texas Southern University and completed master's work at SMU's Perkins School of Theology. What inspired you to continue this path in your education?
Well, first, when I finished my degrees at Texas Southern University, I went into business, and I was a middle management for a Fortune 500 company, which taught me how to deal with diverse populations and people, but I was still teaching in a way. But I didn't know I was teaching, dealing with productivity and doing product management and teaching people how to sell things without, overpricing people was also a structure in teaching. Mm-hmm. So going back to do master's work in children's literature at St. Thomas and the University of Houston also, I learned some really great things about children's literature that I thought, wow, I think I may want to continue to teach this when I get into education. And lo and behold, it has been it was a good background. Now, the seminary at SMU, I have a love for religion. And I have never wanted to be a minister, but I wanted to know religion, understand the background history of it, and to see how it even influenced our literature that we use today. And it does, more than you guys know. That background of the Old Testament and New Testament still reflects in the language that we use right now, and even in some of the things that we study.
So do you have any examples of the language that was used in the Old and New Testament that you learned at SMU?
In the Old Testament, it talked about the the creation theory, and it talked about Proverbs, it talked about lessons in life. Those things are still carried over into the New Testament and even in the things we do today. And if you just study a little bit of history, you don't have to be a religious fanatic. But if you look at the history of the Old Testament and the New Testament, we're repeating some of those things today. And if we're not careful, we might repeat the stuff we don't want to repeat in the Old and New Testament.
Yeah.
So, what would you say was your most memorable experience during your time in the National Seminars Yale National Initiative? And in which ways did this extracurricular help you?
In that initiative, I had this dynamic principal. He was way before his time. In fact, in 2000, he wanted to have virtual books for students. Mm-hmm. Yes, he did. He was shot down because, publishers wanted their money. But he was so adamant of trying to do that. We even had laptops for our students. But at that time, teachers were able to monitor to see what the students were doing. Mm-hmm. So we were able to help them when they were lost or off task. And they could take these laptops home. And this was in 2000, so we were a little bit ahead of the curve. The Yale Initiative was his idea. It was a product of the University of Houston's program. And they wanted us to come up with a new curriculum. And I think the collaborative effort of speaking with my co-workers and people from across Houston and outside of Houston, coming up with new ideas, and then we came up with our own curriculums that were published in, I think, 9 or 10 volumes. And those volumes are still around. And in fact, I was at a training not long ago at AP, and this lady, the teacher, was talking about this idea she had, and lo and behold, it was my idea from 2001. And I didn't embarrass her, but I did ask her some of the things she was doing. And she said, oh, yes, such and such. And I said, yes. And I told her off camera that, yeah, I wrote that in 2000. But that was one of the things. Collaboration is so important because we wrote a whole curriculum for almost every level of study for high school. Yes, and Yale published it, and it's still out there. I am very happy with that.
That's a great
impressive.
Thank you very much.
Now, I know that you've worked with Houston ISD as an education specialist. So were there any insights, if any, that changed your perspective on education?
Yes. The insight that I have, and I share with like minds, I have a very good friend of mine who's a principal now. We talk about how our students have changed. You've changed, and that's a good thing. You have to, because you're now more into technology. When I first started teaching, technology was just becoming a part of the curriculum. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I knew that I had to step it up, okay? So my whole thing has been, since teaching for these last 20-plus years, I try every year or every other year to go and do something different so that I can get a new idea to do something different in my classrooms. Mm-hmm. The one thing I don't like is I don't like to be boring. Mm-hmm. I want the students to have a new insight to an old idea. Mm-hmm. So even this year we did something a little different. I think my juniors probably thought about protesting my class. But what we did was we took the Caliban story in The Tempest and made Caliban a protagonist. And the students, not only did they do an excellent job of it, they had to write his epilogue, but what people really don't understand, you have to study Shakespeare, and the background of Shakespeare is not just about talking about people stranded on an island. He was talking about colonization and how people tear up things when colonization, because colonizers come in and take over and do all this, and that was pretty much the storyline behind The Tempest. So when we got that understood, the students had to change Caliban into a positive protagonist, and they had to rename the island, and the focal point was, how do you stop colonization from happening to that island? And I must say, my students did a great job of that.
Well, I just wanted to follow up. Do you think this gave them a new perspective on the story in general?
Yes, I do, because they had to think it through. Okay, they had to change Caliban. He's not the mindless monster, which was the epitome of what colonizers would do to new people they met at new lands. They would downgrade them, think of them less than who they were, which was totally inaccurate. People that live somewhere know what they're doing. and somebody comes in, just because you're different does not mean you're less than. And that was the most important lesson I wanted to teach in that lesson.
And I'm sure with like that introduced, you got a bunch of different stories on like the different takes that they would have went. That's pretty
One
interesting.
person even changed Calabar into a female.
Oh wow.
That I thought it was empowering.
Yeah.
I'm not stopping creativity, and it was great. The way to present it. I said, I never thought about that. Oh, okay, it was good. Yes.
In 2009, you founded the Early 21st Century, an organization that provides effective and measurable advocacy tools to support learning and development for all students while preventing and reducing barriers. What inspired you to create this organization?
I was the sponsor of a group of young people who were ambassadors to the National Federal Reserve. And the thing about it was, I was part of I was part of those people who chose the students, and I wanted a diverse set of students. And I did that. And the thing about 2009 was we were right in the middle of the technology age. And there were some students who were still being left out. So my idea behind Early 21st Century was to incorporate ideas of technology, but make it simple for students to incorporate into their assignments. The whole thing was getting students to start using more technology with their assignments, because it was still seen as something separate than from education. And as you guys know, where are we now? All we use are our what?
Computers.
Yes.
Laptop.
Digital age.
And those cell phones. But we're working with that. I try to incorporate the cell phones when I can. I really do, because I know that's part of your life. I just don't know how you all walk downstairs and look at the phone. I still haven't gotten that yet.
Yeah, I can't do that, actually.
Hold on to the
I'm very
rating.
clumsy.
But that's why I did that organization, because there were a lot of kids still left out. And they were still trying to find their way. And they were kind of, hesitant, because technology was still, it was there, but it was not as prevalent as it is now. So, yes, that's why I did it. I didn't want to leave anybody out.
Okay, so how do you apply the knowledge gained from the Masters in Speech, Communication, and Rhetoric in your current role?
Well, when you teach, you are presenting. And as a presenter, you have to not entertain your audience, but exude your confidence and also your intellect in a way that does not alienate your audience, but want them to learn more. And as a speaker and as a teacher, you want to talk and lecture, but you don't want to leave your class out of the lecture. You want them to think about what you're doing and ask the right questions for them to want to chime in and even express their own ideas. And that's what I've been working on a lot lately. I know that you all are so very smart, and so many of you have so many different talents, but you're kind of hesitant to feel like you're wrong. And there's nothing wrong with being wrong. That's how you grow. So if your idea is not quite what we're doing, I try not to shoot it down. I say, that's an interesting perspective. How about let's listen to something else? I want you to be a part, let your mind grow with even positive and negatives that are positives. I don't know how to say that any better. Even if you have an incorrect answer, I'm not going to say, wow, that's just horrible. No. Okay, that's an interesting concept. Does anybody else have an idea about that? And that is how I want to put forth education to my students through learning how to speak. And being a speaker, also, you have to know when to pull back and let other people have the floor, even if you're not ready. And sometimes you have that wild hair out there that's going to be all off key, and you say, okay, that was good too, but let's bring it back to the center. You have to know how to do that without causing anyone to feel left out. I don't ever want students to feel left out in my classroom. I want you to feel free to say the things you want to say, even things you think are funny. That's fine. Then let's get back to the point.
Right.
It's just like that phrase, like how there's no stupid questions. That's it's literally what I thought.
There's no stupid questions. It's just you got to listen to an answer,
So did you find those skills helpful when you were writing your books of poetry?
Poetry is a different animal altogether. Sometimes some of the things I have been in my class and observing with my students have inspired some of the poetry that I've written. Yes, it has. And inspiration comes from nature. Inspiration comes from feelings like anger, love, craziness. You know, we all go through these things. And I've been writing poetry since I was 12.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and I didn't realize my mother was a writer. My mother wrote plays for her high school.
Wow.
Yes, Booker T. Washington in Shreveport, Louisiana, okay? And my father also was a writer. He was a theologian. He was a very accomplished. He could make, the way he wrote, you could see what he was talking about in his sermons and his messages without it being real preachy. You know, he would use catchy titles that people wanted to listen to, and those were my inspirations. And my siblings and I were allowed to be individuals, kids, even though we had a lot of same features. My parents never compared us to each other. We were all individuals, all related, but we all had different perspectives on how things looked. And honestly, they were appreciated by our parents. So that helped us grow into who we are. In fact, my sister and I, we live in different states, but sometimes we have the same colors on the same day. You know, we're talking, you were what? I did too. And it's just the way that, you know, subconsciously we're still connected, you know.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So I can only imagine that balancing a teaching career and an organization can be challenging. Can you just tell us about some strategies that you utilize to keep yourself afloat? I
had great support from my administration because that program that I developed, I used it at our school. And it was, you know, these schools were like early college, high schools, and they were looking for new things to support the student base and to help the students feel more comfortable about themselves and to want to express themselves and be that person they need to be in education and on the global stage. Because you guys are going to command our global stage. You're going to be the people we, as we get more seasoned, not older, seasoned, will be coming to, and we'll need your assistance in doing things. I mean, like 2030, there won't be fossil fuel. Well, there might be some fossil fuel, but most of our cars will be totally different, and so will you. You know, and so will I, hopefully. I want to continue to change. I have a 2-year-old granddaughter who's teaching me things. And I'm so impressed because my daughter takes a lot of time with her, like my parents did with me and like I did with it's like a generational thing. But balancing those two things were kind of easy because I had the support. Mm-hmm. And what I was doing was beneficial for the school and for my students. So it was, you know, the idea was just embraced, you know. And that's very special because it takes a very secure set of people to learn from others, even if they're not on your level. Mm-hmm. You know, that I learn from you guys every day. I was so impressed when you guys came to talk to me. I was like, oh my goodness, this is real. You know? And I want to thank you for your professionalism. It was just wonderful. Yes.
We want to thank you again.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question.
Sure.
How do you include your diverse, your beliefs for diverse voices and perspectives in the classroom? How do you reinforce that?
I reinforce that by allowing students to be themselves. We have students I have students who are able to express themselves very differently from anybody else. But the thing is, like today there was an answer to a question we were talking about. I could not for the life of me see how it was related to what we were doing. Mm-hmm. I said, well, won't you explain that before I dismiss it? I learned a long time ago, don't dismiss an answer. Find out how the student is thinking. And when the student told me what he was thinking, I said, now I understand why you brought that up, because you were connecting it to what you already knew. But because I wanted to take the time, and when I heard him speak about why he said that answer, I said, that makes perfect sense, why you would think like that. And then we went on. So I try not to stop you, the student, from having an original thought, because it helps me to think more broadly about what we're doing.
And this is very interesting because it connects to your idea of like being able to learn from others.
Yes.
And it's good that you have like examples that can support what you're saying, you know.
Thank you.
And I wanted to ask, what are some ways that you maintain values for literacy and comprehension in your classroom?
How do I maintain values for literacy and comprehension in classrooms? One thing I do as extra credit, I ask my students to buy a book, any book they want, you know, that they want to read. And they will bring it to me and show it to me, especially if it's a book we're reading in class. I may have a class set, but if I encourage them to buy their own book, and on the side, I'm trying to teach how to build a library, you know, without saying, this is how you build a library, you know. But I want them to start thinking about books other than, oh, I got to read this. No, is it something you want to read? I think literacy is important in creative writing. So when I do project-based assignments, students have an opportunity to be creative in what they're doing. My language students don't know what's coming up next semester, but they're going to have a special project that'll be all about creative thinking about a very well-known subject that we have talked about. You probably learned in elementary school, but never thought about it again, okay? But it's important to me that literacy stays in the forefront of a student's mind without pushing it down their throats. Does that make sense to you?
Keeping it fresh.
Yeah, keeping it fresh. I like that. Keeping it fresh. I try to keep it fresh. Okay.
So you created a curriculum to help students use technology to manage and pass exams. Which advice have you found to be the most effective for your students taking the AP language course?
What we're doing now is doing collaborative thinking, and that is we're looking at this particular stage, we're taking a break from the rigor of rhetoric and talking about the rhetoric of passages. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, the students are not only having to seek out the answers to the questions that they have, you know, because the format of the AP is standard. 5 questions, a set of 5 questions. Is it literal? Is it abstract? Da-da-da, da-da-da. But what I'm finding is that when students start talking and bouncing ideas off each other, they find answers that it may be totally wrong, but their reason for finding that answer is most important. Mm-hmm. And that's what we talk about in class. And then we eliminate, you know, those 5, you always have 1 that's totally wrong. Okay, you have 2 that's so very, very close. There's just a nuance that makes it a difference. And then you have 2 that sounds really good, but just really don't fit what's going on. And once teaching students that application and watching them collaborate, I saw it this morning, it was a good example of students learning from each other. And they called me over, Ms. Callier, we're stuck on this. What do you think? I didn't give the answer, but I said, no, what do you think? And you have to help students go back and incorporate what they know from history, because everything is not segmented. It's all combined in your learning, everything, even math. I know some of you don't like math, but it is part of your learning, okay?
So many students have told us that you refer to them as scholars. Do you think that after receiving more respect when they're talked to, high school students perform better?
My mother and father are the reason that I do some of the things I do. And one of the things, like I said, we used to have these conversations around the table. They never made us feel like we were children, yes. We knew there were certain things we couldn't say, you know. But we also knew that we could express our minds. And they always supported us in in everything we did. There were 4 of us. 2 of us were in elementary, 2 of us were in high school, and my parents would trade off going to our events, you know, because we were in everything, okay? All 4 of us were busy in something. And they were there. They encouraged us. If my father went with the high school kids one time, my mother would do it the next time. They shared this duty. And my parents were busy. You know, they were very busy, you know. But I find that helping students keep their voice, helping them to ascertain who they are as a person, helps them build the confidence they will need to be as young adults and shakers and makers of this new world.
So you listed education reform as one of your skills. What are some steps that you're currently taking to impact the educational system right now?
I truly believe in project-based learning. I've seen it work, and I've seen the creativity and the level of thinking increases when you are collaborating. Because people have different ideas and different ways of seeing things. That's one way. I do it in my little classroom right now. On a broader sense, I did it with some students at a school that was 5,000 kids. And I had one class. I had only a class of 30. I didn't want you to think I was dealing with no. But with this, I did an experiment with them to help them increase their percentages on a test they had to take, and it worked. And what it was collaboration, and how to think with each other instead of being so solo and everything. You're not in this world by yourself, okay? And the younger you learn to be collaborative with people and they respect others' opinions without shutting folks down, that's when you grow. And that's a learning experience. I have to tell students, you're not end all with all about this. So don't say, no, man, that's stupid. Don't ever say something is stupid. Listen to it. Even if it's off base, listen to it, because it might be something there you can use. Okay?
So I'm very interested in the early 21st Century Found organization. Do you have any future plans for it?
I'm going to have to revamp that program because we've come so far in technology, and I have students now who are entrepreneurs in technology, so I need to get with them and talk to them. I mean, they're old, y'all. They're married with children now. But you asked me a question earlier, why do I call students scholars? I don't think I answered that. I want to do it now because of the early 21st century. How a person sees himself is how they will react. And if you're my scholar, then maybe subconsciously you're thinking, what else do I need to do to get sharper with being a scholar? What else should I do to be, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm in high school. And I try not to treat my students as kids. I know you are, trust me. But I know in the long sense you are scholars. You're going to college. You're going to be a mainstay on the global stage. And I keep saying that to my students. You're going to be on the global stage. You're going to college. If you're junior, you're going to be there in another year. If you're senior, you're going to be there in like 2 semesters. So, and that reality hits when we start doing things. So, yes, that's why I call you scholars, because you are. You are. You're here to make a difference so that you can get into the best colleges or universities you want to go to. So why not call you a scholar? What would you like to be called?
Whatever.
I mean, scholar sounds pretty good.
Yeah,
Scholar sounds pretty
I'll
fancy.
stick to scholar.
Then you are my scholar. Then.
Okay, so are there any upcoming projects or program you are looking forward to implementing?
You mean in the classroom?
Yes,
or personal?
School-wise, possibly.
I'm not sure yet. I'm still. This is my 4th year at Townview, and I must say it's been good. My students, you guys have made my life really good. I've run into, of course you're going to run into something, but the majority of the time it's been really an educational feast for me to see what you produce. When I give you an idea, they take it to another level, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, I didn't even think of that, So I've learned in my past to step back when something shocks me and think it through. And one of you all's best proponents and best supporters is my daughter. I'll go to her and say, look, they're doing such and such. Mom, this is how they think, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, thank you. And I before I shut you, I don't want to shut you down until I get some research behind it. I'm a big researcher. I'm going to go find out before I start closing you down on anything, because I need to know what you're thinking and how you're thinking, so I can incorporate that in what I'm teaching.
Have you always been like that since a child?
I think so. I started reading pretty early. I loved to read books, and old school. We were taught to use our imagination when we read. And I'm kind of inflicting that upon my students. What did you see when you read that? Because I think it's a lost art in some ways. I'm not saying it's not being taught, but I don't see it carrying over into even in high school. You've got to see what you're thinking about. You have to stop a minute and give yourself time to think. So when I ask questions in my classroom, what I've had to learn is to wait more than 10 seconds because it takes some time for you all to process things. And I get a little anxious and I say, okay, it's only been 10 seconds, give them 15. Okay, 15 seconds, okay. And I also try to incorporate your voice in how we do things in the classroom. Do you think you have enough time to do this assignment? Do you need an extension now? Let me know. And that seems to build camaraderie with you and trust with me that I'm trying to give you time to get it done right. Now, when you take me for granted, you will know that. That's all I can say.
So, what other objectives do you have in mind for upcoming years for your students in your AP Language and Literature classes?
I want to see what I will learn. I try to go to AP Summer Institute every year or every 2 years, and they have these brush-up courses in the spring and fall. And I want to go. I try to go every other year to learn something new. And generally, the people who are presenting give you something new. And I try to bring that back and incorporate it in my classes in the way that it will be received best. Because even though they might present it a certain way, it may not work for my students, my scholars. Some of you guys are thinking like 4 years ahead of time. And some of you are right here, and some of you are thinking, am I right there yet? You are, but you're not sure you're there. So that's my job, is to make you feel confident. Even if you step out incorrectly, step out on your confidence. That's what I'm pushing you to do. Because the more confident students become better scholars. That's what I think.
Okay. So what kind of curricular are you going to be teaching for AP English based on your experience? Or do you have any that you plan to create for your future classes?
I don't know yet. I want to see what I'm going to learn new. That's what it's based on. I read a lot. My favorite, one of my favorite news spots is NPR. They always have something that's cutting edge. And right now, artificial intelligence is a big deal.
Yes.
And I'm not going to knock it until I understand it thoroughly. However, it's going to be a part of your world.
Yes.
So however we embrace that, because I'm probably dating myself, but I recall when people were having a heart attack about people using calculators on the SAT test. Oh my goodness, you should have seen some math teachers. They were having, they were very concerned. But the thing was, that's what you're going to use. You know, some of us, my mom was telling me she had to memorize all these formulas before she could take a test. To me, that was always kind of creepy. Why would you, because, you get in there and you can see people writing down all the formulas. And I remember that myself. You had to write down, so you would, because when the question came up or the particular math problem came up, you had to think about that formula to use. And at least they let us write them down, when you first sat down. You could not go. So when they started using these graphic calculators, I was happy, because, my daughter had to buy one. She was 7th grade, and they had to use graphic calculators and whatever they were doing at their school. I said, cool. Thing cost a fortune back then, but whatever it was that she needed to improve herself, I found a way to do it. That's what parents do.
I mean, the calculators now still cost a lot.
Some of
like
them are pretty
$100
pricey.
something. That's
Well, think about that when my daughter was 7th grade, okay? Now, I have a granddaughter. So give you an idea how long ago that was?
Yeah.
Okay. So $100 back then was $100, whatever. That was expensive.
Right.
So I said, you better not lose this thing.
And this reminded me of when teachers would be like, oh, you're not always going to have a calculator on you, but then now we have them on our phones.
Yes. Yes, and you'll be flying in cars, and you all, someone in this room is going to figure out how we can use the old petroleum for something new. Some of you are going to find out how it's going to be able to be decomposed into our earth without harming our earth. Somebody here is going to do that, and I'm pushing for that. I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to do. I'm not putting anything past you guys.
Well, talking about the future, do you see yourself going back to being a college professor in the future?
I'm still a college professor.
Really?
I'm an adjunct professor. I haven't taught this semester, but I teach at Dallas College. But for the last 17 years, that's what I've always done. And the reason I like being a college professor, adjunct professor, is because I see what's coming into the college classroom. And they're not all coming from the Townview type schools. And it always brings me back to reality, so I can figure out, okay, how can I better prepare my students so when they get into this college environment, nobody will say, where'd they come from? Yes, because I've had students, and this is the truth, who really didn't understand the basic how to write a paragraph. It's nothing to do with how they taught or what they learned. It's just that's what happened. Everybody, even though equality is out there saying about education, it's not always equal. Let's be honest, it's not. So those gaps are the ones I feel like I need to fill in so that people can be successful. So being, college professors, I can see what's coming into the classroom, especially when I was teaching English 1301, 1302. That was an eye-opener.
Yeah, it gives you more perspective for sure.
Yes, it did.
And it's like, you can tell that equality doesn't mean equity.
No, ma'am. Not by any chance. Because I think that we're still not incorporating all the cultures into what we're doing. And how people think and how, because there was a time when I could actually tell what culture a student was by the way they wrote. And I'm sure most people didn't even care. I did, because I didn't want to incorrectly grade something because they wrote a certain way. I said, oh, okay, I got this. I know where this is, So you have to keep an open mind. You cannot close your mind in education because you become a dinosaur.
So how do you think teachers in the future or, now should start incorporating culture more into their classrooms? Like any teacher. It could be a math, science, English, any teacher. How do you think they should incorporate culture into their classrooms?
Right now, teachers have a lot on their plates, and it appears that I don't know. I think teachers who are in the classroom deserve a great amount of support for trying to keep students, balanced in what they already have. Culturally, I believe that it's important that we have more representation of our different cultures on campuses. That way our students will feel more inclusive. And even if it's something I can't do, perhaps they can find someone else they can talk to help them, feel more comfortable with whom they are. I believe it's very important that our campuses start reflecting our student body. I do believe that. I believe that on all areas. It doesn't matter what it is. I think we have to have that so that our students will feel inclusive.
We're a community.
And a community. Very good. Yes, ma'am.
So you have a clear talent for public speaking. What helped you grow this talent? What helped you grow this talent? And do you have any tips for public speaking that you would like to share with us?
Thank you for asking. Public speaking started in 6th grade. I had to memorize the valedictorian speech. Back then, I don't know what they were thinking, but they gave me a 10-page speech, single-spaced, that I had to memorize. Yeah, look at your eyes. Yes, yes. And my mother helped me. And she said the rest of
I'm sorry, hold on. You said single space, not double,
10 pages,
not 1.15,
I can't
single,
write
not double 12.
5 pages, double spaces.
It was single-spaced 10 pages. I will never forget it. My mother helped me memorize it, and she said, the rest, I'm going to tell you now, you better take a piece of paper and write down the first line of each paragraph so you can remember what you're saying. And that helped me tremendously. But she was in theater and art and all that stuff. So she understood, and she said, and I'll give you the tips that she gave me. When you're speaking, center yourself. Stop for a moment, give yourself about 5 seconds, and center yourself. I don't care who's out there. Center yourself. Second thing, if your family's in the audience, never look at them. Never look at them, okay? If you do, you're lost, okay? And don't look at your good friends either. They're going to do stuff.
They're going to make you laugh.
They're going to make you laugh, and you're going to forget what you're doing. So when you're speaking, center yourself. You know what you have to talk about, but that takes practice. Go ahead and practice. Get in the mirror. Look at yourself. See how you sound. Record yourself. Speak with others. Get with your group. How do you sound? How do you look? How you look, how you sound, how you perform before a person, even in a class, means a lot of your confidence is showing because you practice, you know the material, and you know what you have to say. The other thing I would suggest you do as a speaker, look at your audience, but look right above, look right at their hairlines. And it looks as if you're looking right at them. And that helps you to stay focused on what you're saying, but also includes your audience in your speech, okay? That way they know that you're looking at them, but not looking at them, and you're staying focused. There are other ways that you, if you want, you can come to my class. I can teach you these things. There's so many spaces you should go from where you speak from a podium. There's so many steps you should take. There's so much you should do with your hands, your breathing. It's a lot of things, but once you get it under control, it's fine. But mine started with 6th grade and that doggone long speech.
I don't think I would survive reading that.
Oh, yes, you would, because at that time and era, that's what you did. And honestly, this speech came from my mother's time and era. She said, why are they still doing this? I said, I don't know, but I had to do it. And to this day, I don't remember one word of that speech. I did it all. Don't ask me what it said. I don't know what it was. But I remember saying it, and I got it out, and I said it where people could understand it, but I don't recall the message of the speech. I know it's about moving forward. That's all I remember. We're moving forward to 7th grade. And that was it. I was moving forward to 7th grade, and so was my class. So I remember that very well. But my mom really helped me to understand how to do the speech. And I'm so glad. I was almost saying, no, Mom. They said no paper. I am so glad I listened because I said, oh, there you go. And I started speaking again. That's what, it came from her and my dad. They both were very good speakers, very, very good speakers. They were always in front of, my folks were in the civil rights. My dad was part of that King Revolution in Birmingham, Alabama. My mother sat in, did those sit-in things, and I told my parents, y'all were trying to make us orphans before we knew you. And they told us those experiences, so that gave us more confidence to be who we are and to be proud of who we are inside without being arrogant. That's important. There's a balance there.
Well, I'm going to have to take some tips on that public speaking, miss.
You're welcome. And you come find me, and I'll help you. If you need some help, I'll be happy to help you with that.
So, focusing on your passion of literacy, do you have any book recommendations for us and our viewers today?
I would love to tell you about all these wonderful books, but what I've found is that people have to find their own niche. Okay, mine is history. I'm a history buff. I love to read about history and the nuances of history people don't know about. For example, I went to see the movie Napoleon the other day. And yes, the actor did a fantastic job, but they didn't really tell us how he died. I know how he died, but they didn't say it in the movie. I'm not telling you either. But it was a slow process of killing him, is what they did. He was he was something else, but the people who put him on that island knew that he was probably going to try to come back, because they put him on one island before he came back. So this time they put him on another island and told him, you have to stay there, but they kind of made sure that he stayed. You know, he lost his strength as time went on. And yes, it was purposely done. And yes, you'll have to find it for yourself.
For when you're reading, like, is there like different methods that you use for reading different genres?
Well, mostly, if it's for me, mostly it has to be, when some people who know me well will sit there and say, I think you'll like this book. And generally they're right, okay? But mostly my thing is about history or things based on history, or an offset, some type of fiction on history.
Ooh, I like those.
I like that. I like to see how people are thinking as a third person or as a person not, like off-stage person watching the events of the historical event and their perspective. I like that. So that's why I can't say, yes, go read this, go read that. Right now I want to read about the other Kennedy daughter, Rosemary. People don't talk about her very often, and her father had something to do with her development. And I just want to read more about Rosemary because she became obscure because she didn't fit into the, quote, Kennedy character, shall we say. Okay. She had a mental illness. That's what it was. And they kind of sheltered her or kept her away from things. And I just want to see what happened to her life.
Oh, see, they don't talk about that at all.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Callier, for visiting us today. Do you have any closing remarks that you'd like to share with us in the audience?
I do. Some of my students ask me about my poetry, and I do plan to republish the poetry and publish new poetry, hopefully by the spring. And yes, that's what I'm working on now. Redoing that and getting it out there. I have 3 books that I've already self-published, and I really wanted to get them back out again and add to as a different book. So that's what I'm doing.
Interesting.
All right, well, that's a wrap, KSBM. Make sure to follow us on our social medias down below, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
And thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to KSBM Radio, the voice of Townview.
My radio station.
We hope you enjoyed the great content and great discussion, all from a student's perspective. Make sure to follow us on Twitter for the latest updates at KSBM_TVT or on Facebook at KSBM Radio.
Add 'em on Facebook.
Check them on Facebook.
Take care.